these rising maintenance costs are directly attributable to your oversight.
That is completely out of line. We discussed the budget increases.
They thought it was just a fence. Just a few wooden posts, a quiet boundary, something easy to tear down. To them, it was nothing. But to me, it was everything. One morning, I stepped outside and froze. It was gone. Splintered. Crushed. Flattened into the dirt like it never existed. No warning. No knock. No conversation. Just a cold letter from the HOA. Non-compliant. That was it. But what they didn't understand was that this wasn't just a fence. It was my line. And they crossed it. So I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I built. Not wood this time. Steel. Cold. Solid. Unbreakable. Every panel stronger. Every inch a message. By the time they came back, with trucks and that same authority, I was ready. The engine roared. The driver pushed forward like before. Like nothing had changed. And then, crash. Metal hit steel. The truck stopped. Dead. Silence filled the air. No second attempt. No more warnings. No more letters. Just one realization left standing. Some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed. And some people, they don't rebuild what you break. They make sure you never break it again. Not because they agreed, but because he carried authority. Pause. And Harold believed in one thing more than anything else. Cut costs no matter what. Pause. To him, every expense was a problem waiting to be solved. Pause. Every dollar spent was a dollar wasted, unless he could justify it. Pause. And over time, that mindset started shaping the entire community. Pause. Less maintenance. Fewer upgrades. Tighter budgets. Pause. At first, it seemed reasonable, even smart. Pause. But then, it went further. Pause. That evening, the HOA meeting room was unusually full. Pause. Rows of folding chairs filled the space. Residents sat shoulder to shoulder. Whispers moved through the room like a quiet current. Pause. People could feel it. Something big was about to happen. Pause. Some were curious. Some were hopeful. Some already uneasy. Pause. At the front of the room, the HOA board sat behind a long table. Papers neatly arranged. Water bottles untouched. Pause. And at the center, Harold Benson. Pause. He tapped the microphone lightly. The small echo filled the room. And just like that, the whispers stopped. Pause. Silence. Pause. Harold adjusted his glasses, looked around the room, and smiled. Pause. A confident smile. Pause. The kind of smile that says, I know something you don't. Pause. But also, the kind that makes you feel just a little uncomfortable. Pause. Ladies and gentlemen, he began calmly. We found a way to reduce our annual expenses. Pause. He paused, letting the moment stretch. Pause. By nearly 18%. Murmurs begin softly. Pause. That number hit the room instantly. 18%. Pause. People leaned forward. Eyes widened. Pause. Some looked impressed. Others exchanged quick glances. Pause. Because that wasn't a small number. Pause. That was big. Pause. Very big. Pause. Harold raised his hand slightly, silencing the murmurs again. Pause. Starting next month, he said slowly, carefully choosing each word. Pause. We will be removing all fire hydrants inside the community. Long pause, let it breathe. Pause. For a moment. Nothing happened. Pause. No reaction. No sound. Pause. It didn't register. Pause. It was the kind of statement your brain rejects at first, because it doesn't make sense. Pause. Then suddenly, the room shifted. Pause. What? Wait, what did he say? Fire hydrants. That's not possible. Pause. The whispers turned into voices. Confusion spread quickly. Pause. A woman stood up from the back row, her voice slightly shaky. Excuse me, removing fire hydrants? Pause. She hesitated, then said what everyone was thinking. Isn't that dangerous? Pause. All eyes turned to Harold. Pause. But he didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. Pause. He had prepared for this. Pause. Not at all, he replied calmly. Pause. The nearest city hydrants are less than a mile away. Pause. He spoke like a man presenting facts, not a decision. Pause. Emergency services can still access water without any issue. Pause. A man in the front row frowned deeply. He leaned forward. But response time matters, he said. Pause. Even a few minutes can. Pause. Harold cut him off. Sharp. Controlled. Pause. We've done the calculations. Pause. That was it. Pause. No explanation. No details. Just confidence. Pause. Another board member leaned forward, trying to reinforce the point. Pause. Maintaining hydrants costs money. Pause. Inspections, repairs, pressure testing. Pause. He shrugged casually. It's unnecessary spending. Pause. Unnecessary. Pause. That word lingered in the air. Pause. And then, Harold delivered the line that sealed everything. Pause. We are a private community. Pause. And we need to be smart with our budget. Pause. Silence. Pause. Then, a few people started clapping. Pause. Slow at first. Awkward. Pause. But it was enough. Pause. Because once applause starts, it spreads. Pause. Not everyone joined. Pause. Some sat frozen. Pause. Others looked at each other, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Pause. But the decision was already made. Pause. And HOA decisions don't wait for approval. Pause. They move forward. Pause. 2 weeks later, the trucks arrived. Pause. Early in the morning. Pause. Before most people even stepped outside. Pause. Workers in bright orange vests, carrying heavy tools, moved through the streets. Pause. The sound of metal hitting pavement echoed sharply. Pause. Clang. 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 Pause. Residents began stepping out of their homes. Watching. Pause. Confused at first. Pause. Then realizing. Pause. No, they're actually doing it. Pause. One by one, the bright red fire hydrants were dug out of the ground. Pause. Bolts loosened. Pipes disconnected. Pause. Each hydrant removed, like it never belonged there. Pause. Some residents pulled out their phones, recording everything. Pause. Others walked up to the workers, angry. Pause. Who approved this? Pause. This is insane. Pause. You can't just remove safety like this. Pause. But the workers didn't argue. Pause. They didn't explain. Pause. They didn't stop. Pause. They had orders. Pause. And orders don't come with emotions. Pause. By the end of the week, every hydrant was gone. Pause. Slow, heavy tone. No backups. No replacements. Pause. Just empty spaces where safety used to stand. Pause. And just like that, Maple Ridge Estates became a neighborhood without fire protection. Pause. At first, nothing happened. Pause. No fires. No emergencies. Pause. Everything looked normal. Pause. Too normal. Pause. The same quiet streets. The same trim lawns. The same perfect houses. Pause. But something had changed. Pause. Something invisible. Pause. Something no one could see, but some could feel. Pause. And sometimes, pause. Music fades slowly. That's the most dangerous part. Pause. Complete silence. Weeks passed. Pause. Then another. Pause. Then another. Pause. Time moved forward. Quietly. Normally. Almost peacefully. Pause. And that was the problem. Pause. Because life in Maple Ridge continued. As if nothing had changed. Pause. As if something important hadn't been removed. Pause. As if safety itself hadn't been quietly taken away. Pause. Kids rode their bikes down the same clean streets. Pause. Their laughter echoed between identical houses. Pause. Basketballs bounced in driveways. Dogs barked behind perfectly measured fences. Pause. Neighbors waved to each other, smiling, talking about small things. Weather, groceries, weekend plans. Pause. And every few days, like clockwork, HOA violation letters appeared in mailboxes. Pause. A trash bin left out too long. Pause. Grass half an inch too tall. Pause. A car parked slightly off the line. Pause. The rules were still being enforced. Strictly. Pause. Perfectly. Pause. But something else, something far more important, was missing. Pause. And not everyone could ignore it. Pause. Because underneath that normal routine, something felt off. Pause. Not obvious. Not loud. Pause. But present. Pause. Like a quiet warning that no one wanted to acknowledge. Pause. Daniel Carter felt it the most. Pause. He couldn't explain it fully, but he felt it. Pause. Every time he stepped outside. Every time he walked past that empty space. Every time he noticed what wasn't there anymore. Pause. It stayed in his mind. Pause. Daniel had lived in Maple Ridge for over 10 years. Pause. He had seen the neighborhood grow. Watch families move in. Watch kids grow up. Pause. He wasn't the type to complain. Pause. He didn't attend every meeting. He didn't argue over small rules. Pause. He kept to himself. Lived quietly. Pause. But this? Pause. This didn't sit right with him. Pause. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, Daniel stood outside his house. Pause. Still. Silent. Pause. His eyes fixed on the empty patch of ground near the curb. Pause. That's where the hydrant used to be. Pause. Bright red. Impossible to miss. Pause. Now, there was nothing. Pause. Just dry dirt. Pause. A small uneven patch. Like something had been erased. Pause. He stared at it for a long moment. Pause. Then slowly shook his head. Pause. This is a mistake. Pause. He said it quietly, almost to himself. Pause. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just a mistake. Pause. It was a risk. Pause. A serious one. Pause. The next morning, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, laptop open. Pause. He took a deep breath and started typing. Pause. An email to the HOA. Pause. Not an angry one. Pause. Not aggressive. Pause. Careful. Detailed. Respectful. Pause. He explained everything. Pause. Response time. Pause. Fire spread rates. Pause. Worst case scenarios. Pause. He even included examples. Real incidents. Real consequences. Pause. He wasn't trying to argue. Pause. He was trying to make them understand. Pause. He read it twice. Then a third time. Pause. And finally, he hit send. Pause. And waited. Pause. Hours passed. Pause. Then a day. Pause. Then two. Pause. No reply. Pause. No acknowledgement. Pause. Nothing. Pause. It was like the message never existed. Pause. So Daniel made a decision. Pause. If they wouldn't listen through email, he would speak in person. Pause. At the next HOA meeting, he showed up early. Pause. This time, he didn't sit in the back. Pause. He didn't stay quiet. Pause. He waited, watched, listened. Pause. And when the time came, he stood up. Pause. This is dangerous, he said. Pause. His voice steady, firm. Pause. Removing fire hydrants puts everyone at risk. Pause. The room shifted slightly. Pause. Some people nodded. Pause. Others looked down. Pause. But at the front of the room, Harold barely reacted. Pause. He glanced at Daniel. Then away. Pause. You're overreacting, he said. Pause. Just like that. Pause. Dismissed. Pause. Daniel didn't sit down. Pause. Fires don't wait, he continued. Pause. Every second matters. Pause. A few heads turned. Pause. The words hit differently this time. Pause. But then, another board member leaned forward. Pause. A slight smirk on his face. Pause. If there's a fire. Pause. We call the fire department. Pause. A few people chuckled softly. Pause. Not loudly. Pause. But enough. Pause. Daniel didn't react. Pause. His expression stayed the same. Pause. This isn't a joke. Pause. Silence. Pause. For a brief moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, someone would take him seriously. Pause. But then Harold moved on. Pause. Next agenda item, he said. Pause. And just like that, the conversation ended. Pause. Ignored. Pause. Dismissed. Pause. Forgotten. Pause. But Daniel wasn't the only one noticing things anymore. Pause. A few weeks later, something changed. Pause. Letters began arriving. Pause. Not from the HOA. Pause. From insurance companies. Pause. Envelopes with official logos. Formal language. Pause. Inside. Warnings. Pause. Some residents saw their premiums increase. Pause. Others were notified of policy adjustments. Pause. A few received something worse. Pause. Risk alerts. Pause. The reason was always the same. Pause. Reduced fire protection. Pause. That phrase started spreading quickly through the neighborhood. Pause. People talked. Compared letters. Pause. Concern grew. Pause. So they brought it up. At the next meeting. Pause. But Harold dismissed it immediately. Pause. Temporary changes, he said. Pause. Nothing to worry about. Pause. But his tone was different this time. Pause. Less confident. Pause. Just slightly. Pause. And then, something happened. Pause. Music tension rises. A small garage fire. Pause. It started quietly. Pause. An electrical fault. Pause. A spark. Pause. Nothing dramatic at first. Pause. But fire doesn't stay small. Pause. By the time someone noticed, it had already spread. Pause. Smoke rising. Flames growing. Pause. Neighbors rushed outside. Pause. Someone called 911. Pause. Everyone waited. Pause. And waited. Pause. And waited. Pause. When the firefighters finally arrived, they acted fast. Pause. Professional. Focused. Pause. But something was off. Pause. There was a delay. Pause. A small one. Pause. But noticeable. Pause. And in that time, the fire had already done damage. Pause. More than it should have. Pause. Much more. Pause. After everything was over, neighbors stood outside, talking quietly. Pause. And they all said the same thing. Pause. They took longer than usual. Pause. No one said it loudly. Pause. But everyone heard it. Pause. And everyone understood. Pause. But once again, the HOA denied any connection. Pause. Isolated incident. Pause. That phrase came back. Pause. Cold. Repeated. Pause. Isolated incident. Pause. But this time, it didn't feel convincing. Pause. It felt like an excuse. Pause. Daniel heard it too. Pause. And he knew. Pause. This wasn't isolated. Pause. It was a warning. Pause. The first one. Pause. And something inside him tightened. Pause. Because he could feel it. Pause. Something bigger was coming. Pause. Something worse. Pause. He didn't know when. Pause. He didn't know how. Pause. But he knew one thing for sure. Pause. They weren't ready. Pause. Music builds slowly. And then, pause. On one calm evening. Pause. When everything felt normal again. Pause. When no one was expecting anything. Pause. Everything changed. Pause. Music cuts to silence. It was a quiet night. Too quiet. Pause. At the Maple Ridge Clubhouse. Lights were glowing. Music was playing. Laughter filled the air. Pause. The HOA board was celebrating. Pause. A private dinner. Their successful cost-cutting quarter. Pause. Harold stood with a glass in his hand. Smiling. Confident. Pause. To smart decisions, he said. Glasses clinked. People cheered. Pause. Outside. Something small happened. Pause. An electrical spark. Pause. Barely noticeable. Pause. But sparks don't stay small for long. Pause. A flame appeared. Then another. Pause. Slowly. Fire began crawling along the building's exterior. Pause. Inside. No one noticed. Pause. The music was too loud. The laughter too constant. Pause. Until someone stopped. Pause. Do you smell that? Pause. At first ignored. Pause. Then the lights flickered. Pause. A board member turned toward the window and froze. Pause. Is that fire? Pause. Sudden shift in tone. Panic exploded. Pause. Chairs fell. People rushed. Voices overlapped. Pause. Call 911. Pause. Phones came out. Hands shaking. Pause. The clubhouse is on fire. Pause. Outside. The flames were already growing. Faster. Stronger. Pause. Firefighters were dispatched immediately. Pause. But when they arrived, reality hit. Pause. There were no hydrants. Pause. Silence. Not one. Pause. They had to connect hoses from outside the neighborhood. Pause. Every second mattered. And seconds were slipping away. Pause. Residents gathered at a distance. Watching. Helpless. Pause. The fire roared, devouring everything. Pause. The roof collapsed. Windows shattered. Pause. And standing there, watching it all burn, were the same people who made the decision. Pause. Harold whispered. This can't be happening. Pause. But it was. Pause. And there was nothing he could do. Pause. Music slows, emotional tone. By the time the fire was under control, the clubhouse was gone. Pause. Completely destroyed. Pause. The next morning, silence covered Maple Ridge. Pause. Then came anger. Pause. Residents demanded answers. Videos spread online. People pointed out the obvious. Pause. No hydrants. Delayed response. Preventable. Pause. The HOA had no defense left. Pause. Within weeks, board members resigned. Pause. Including Harold. Pause. New leadership took over. And their first decision? Pause. Bring back every fire hydrant. Immediately. Pause. No debate. No delay. Pause. Soft reflective music. The clubhouse was rebuilt. Stronger. Safer. Pause. But the lesson remained. Pause. Daniel stood near a newly installed hydrant one evening. A neighbor approached him. You tried to warn them, she said. Pause. Daniel nodded. They didn't listen. Pause. She looked at the hydrant. Then at the clubhouse. Pause. At least now they will. Pause. Daniel didn't respond. Pause. Because some lessons come at a cost. Pause. And sometimes, you only understand the value of something. Pause. After it's gone.